Lisa had finally found her perfect home. After months of house hunting, she fell in love with a cozy two-story house in Maplewood Hills. The neighborhood looked like something straight out of a magazine. Clean sidewalks, well-trimmed lawns, and friendly neighbors waving from their porches. But the best part was the backyard. It was like having her own private paradise with beautiful flower beds, a small wooden deck, and tall trees that gave her complete privacy. Moving day couldn't come fast enough. Lisa had been working downtown for years, dealing with stressful situations every single day. Her job required her to be sharp, analytical, and always ready for a fight, but she never talked about her work with neighbors. She preferred keeping her professional life separate from her personal life. All anyone needed to know was that she worked in an office downtown and valued her quiet time at home. The moving truck arrived on a sunny Saturday morning. Lisa watched as the movers carefully carried her furniture and boxes into her new home. She felt genuinely excited about this fresh start. The previous owner had left behind a beautiful garden, and Lisa couldn't wait to spend her evenings watering plants and reading books on the deck. That's when she first noticed Patricia watching from across the street. Patricia had lived in Maplewood Hills for 5 years and considered herself the unofficial neighborhood watchdog. She had short blonde hair, always wore business casual clothes even on weekends, and carried herself like someone who thought she was in charge of everything. Patricia had been the HOA treasurer, then secretary, and now held the self-created position of community standards coordinator. Nobody had voted for this position, but Patricia acted like it was the most important job in the world. From her living room window, Patricia studied every box that came off the truck. She made mental notes about Lisa's furniture, her car, and especially the fact that Lisa seemed to be living alone. Patricia had already done some research online and found very little information about her new neighbor. This bothered her more than it should have. She liked knowing everything about everyone in her territory. Lisa spent the first week unpacking and settling in. She loved her morning coffee on the back deck, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of birds and rustling leaves. The neighborhood seemed perfect. A few neighbors had stopped by with welcome cookies and friendly introductions. Everyone seemed normal and pleasant, but Patricia was busy making other plans. On Tuesday of Lisa's second week, she found her first surprise. A bright yellow notice was taped to her front door. The official-looking paper had Homeowners Association violation notice, printed at the top in bold red letters. Lisa's heart sank as she read the details. Garbage receptacles left at curb past designated collection time. Violation code 15.3, fine $50. Please remit payment within 10 business days. Lisa stared at the notice in confusion. She had put her garbage cans out Monday night and brought them back Tuesday evening, just like she'd seen other neighbors do. She checked her watch and realized she had been about 30 minutes late bringing them in. 30 minutes. A $50 fine for being 30 minutes late. She walked over to her next-door neighbor, Tom's house. Tom was a retired teacher who had been incredibly welcoming during her first week. "Hey, Tom. Quick question about the garbage pickup rules," Lisa said, holding up the yellow notice. Tom's face immediately showed sympathy and frustration. "Oh no, you got Patricia'd already? That was fast even for her. Patricia'd?" "Patricia Henderson, our self-appointed HOA police. She drives around the neighborhood with a stopwatch and measuring tape. Most of us have gotten at least one bogus fine from her. The real HOA board doesn't even know half the stuff she does." Tom explained that Patricia had been escalating her enforcement activities over the past 2 years. She had started with legitimate violations, but gradually began finding problems where none existed. The official HOA board was mostly older residents who didn't want to deal with confrontation, so they let Patricia handle minor issues to keep the peace. My advice? Just pay it and try to stay off her radar. Fighting her usually makes things worse, Tom said with the voice of experience. Lisa thanked Tom and went back inside, but something about the whole situation bothered her. In her professional life, she was used to dealing with people who abused power. This felt eerily similar. The second violation came on Friday. Lisa had parked her car in her own driveway after a long day at work. She was carrying grocery bags and her work briefcase when she noticed another yellow paper fluttering on her windshield. Vehicle parked in violation of property line regulations. Right front tire extends 4.2 inches beyond designated parking area. Violation code 22.7. Fine $75. Lisa dropped her grocery bags and stared at the notice. She looked at her car, then at her driveway. Her tire was barely touching the edge of her property line. She got out her phone and took pictures from every angle, documenting exactly where her car was positioned. This time, she decided to do some research of her own. That weekend, Lisa spent several hours reading through the actual HOA bylaws and regulations. She discovered some interesting facts. First, the garbage can rule had a built-in grace period of 2 hours that Patricia had conveniently ignored. Second, the parking violation required the vehicle to extend more than 6 inches beyond the property line, not 4. Patricia was literally making up her own rules. Lisa also found out that Patricia had issued over 200 violation notices in the past year, compared to fewer than 20 the year before Patricia took over enforcement duties. Several neighbors had filed complaints with the official HOA board, but nothing had been done. Monday morning brought another surprise. Lisa was getting ready for work when she heard voices in her backyard. She peeked out her kitchen window and saw Patricia standing near her fence line with another woman, both of them pointing at Lisa's property and taking notes. Lisa watched as Patricia pulled out a measuring tape and began measuring the distance between Lisa's fence and the property line. The other woman was taking photos with her phone. They spent about 15 minutes documenting everything they could see from their position outside the fence. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just aggressive HOA enforcement anymore. This felt like harassment. That evening, Lisa called Tom again. "She's escalating," Lisa told him about the morning's incident. "That's Patricia's pattern," Tom confirmed. "She starts with legitimate-sounding violations, then gradually pushes boundaries to see how much she can get away with. The people who fight back usually get targeted worse. The ones who just pay the fines and stay quiet eventually get left alone." Lisa thanked Tom but didn't mention what she was really thinking. In her professional experience, bullies who got away with small violations always pushed for bigger ones. Patricia was testing her limits, trying to establish dominance early in their relationship. Lisa had dealt with people like Patricia before, but never as a regular homeowner just trying to live peacefully. She found herself in an unusual position. She could handle this situation in ways that most people couldn't, but doing so might reveal more about herself than she wanted her neighbors to know. For now, she decided to pay the fines and see what Patricia would do next. But Lisa was already documenting everything, taking photos, keeping records, and preparing for what her professional instincts told her was an inevitable escalation. Patricia had picked the wrong neighbor to mess with. She just didn't know it yet. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa moved into Maplewood Hills, and Patricia was growing frustrated. Most new residents either fought back immediately or became completely submissive after the first few violations. Lisa was different. She paid the fines without complaint but didn't seem intimidated. This bothered Patricia more than she wanted to admit. Patricia had built her reputation in the neighborhood on being thorough and uncompromising. Other residents whispered her name with a mixture of fear and annoyance, which gave her a sense of power she had never experienced before. But Lisa wasn't giving her the reaction she expected. It was time to step up her game. Saturday morning started like any other weekend for Lisa. She had planned to sleep in, make a nice breakfast, and spend some time working in her garden. The weather was perfect, and she was looking forward to her first peaceful weekend since moving in. Patricia had different plans. Patricia had been watching Lisa's routine for weeks. She knew Lisa usually went grocery shopping around 10 in the morning on Saturdays. She had also noticed that Lisa kept her back gate unlocked, probably because she sometimes carried garden supplies through it. Patricia saw this as the perfect opportunity for what she called a comprehensive property inspection. Patricia had convinced herself that Lisa's privacy fence was too tall. The HOA rules stated that fences couldn't exceed 6 feet, and Patricia was sure Lisa's fence was at least 6 inches taller. She had been measuring it from her own yard, but she needed to get closer for accurate measurements. She also suspected that the small garden shed in Lisa's backyard might violate the required setback distance from property lines. At 9:30, Patricia gathered her supplies. She packed her tablet, digital camera, measuring tape, notebook, and a small ladder that her husband Bob reluctantly helped her carry to Lisa's fence line. "Are you sure about this, Patricia?" Bob asked nervously. "This feels like we're crossing a line here." "Bob, I am the Community Standards Coordinator," Patricia replied with the authority of someone who had given herself that title. It's my responsibility to ensure all residents comply with HOA regulations. Lisa has been ignoring our legitimate concerns, so more thorough investigation is necessary. Bob had learned over the years that arguing with Patricia was pointless when she got into one of her enforcement moods. He helped position the ladder against Lisa's fence and held it steady while Patricia climbed over. "Just keep watch and let me know if she comes back," Patricia instructed as she dropped down into Lisa's backyard. Lisa's backyard was even more beautiful up close. The previous owners had clearly invested significant time and money in professional landscaping. Patricia felt a twinge of jealousy, which quickly transformed into determination to find something wrong. She started with the fence, pulling out her measuring tape and carefully documenting the height at several points. To her disappointment, the fence measured exactly 6 feet at every location. Patricia made a note that she would need to research whether the fence posts themselves counted toward the total height. Next, she approached the garden shed. It was a charming wooden structure that matched the house perfectly. Patricia measured the distance from the shed to each property line, hoping to find it too close to the boundaries. Again, she was disappointed to discover that the shed met all setback requirements with room to spare. Growing more frustrated, Patricia began looking for other potential violations. She photographed Lisa's garden sprinkler heads, wondering if they might spray onto neighboring properties. She documented the placement of outdoor furniture, the type of plants in the garden beds, and even the color of the house trim. Then she noticed Lisa's back windows. Patricia realized she could see directly into Lisa's house from certain angles in the yard. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she found herself walking closer to the house, trying to peer through the windows to see how Lisa lived. Through the kitchen window, she could see a tidy space with expensive-looking appliances. The dining room appeared formal and well-organized, but it was the glimpse into what looked like a home office that really caught her attention. Patricia pressed her face closer to the window, trying to see more details. The office had built-in bookshelves filled with thick volumes, a large desk with multiple computer monitors, and what appeared to be file cabinets. It looked more professional than she would have expected from someone who claimed to work in a generic downtown office. She was so focused on trying to see more that she didn't notice the small security camera mounted under the eaves of the house, quietly recording her every movement. Patricia spent nearly 2 hours in Lisa's backyard, photographing everything from multiple angles and taking detailed measurements of every structure. She even used her phone to record voice notes about potential violations she might research later. Garden appears well-maintained but may include non-approved plant varieties, she dictated to her phone while walking through Lisa's flower beds. Outdoor furniture placement should be verified against community aesthetic guidelines. As she was finishing her documentation, Patricia heard Bob calling from the other side of the fence. "Patricia, car pulling into the driveway." Patricia quickly gathered her supplies and hurried back to the fence. Bob helped pull her up and over, and they rushed to put the ladder away before Lisa could see them. Lisa returned from her grocery shopping trip feeling relaxed and happy. The store hadn't been crowded. She had found everything on her list, and she was looking forward to trying a new recipe for lunch. She pulled into her driveway and grabbed her shopping bags from the trunk. As she walked toward her front door, something felt different. She couldn't put her finger on it, but her professional instincts were telling her something was off. She had learned to trust those instincts over the years. After putting away her groceries, Lisa decided to check her backyard before starting lunch preparations. As soon as she stepped outside, she knew someone had been there. The gate was still unlocked as she had left it, but there were footprints in the soft soil around her flower beds. Someone had been walking through her garden. Lisa felt her heart rate increase. Someone had been in her private backyard while she was gone. This was no longer about HOA violations. This was trespassing. She walked carefully around her yard, trying not to disturb the evidence while documenting what she saw. There were clear footprints near her fence, around her shed, and most disturbingly, right up to her back windows. Someone had been trying to look into her house. Lisa pulled out her phone and took photos of every footprint, every disturbed area of soil, and the muddy marks someone had left on her fence. Her professional training kicked in automatically. She was treating this like a crime scene because that's exactly what it was. Then she remembered her security system. Lisa had installed motion-activated cameras when she moved in. partly for general security but mostly because her job sometimes required her to work with sensitive materials at home. She had cameras covering her driveway, front porch, and backyard. Inside her house, Lisa pulled up the camera footage on her computer. What she saw made her blood boil. The cameras had captured everything. Patricia climbing over her fence. Patricia walking through her garden, taking photos and measurements. Patricia pressing her face to Lisa's windows, trying to see inside her house. Patricia spending 2 hours systematically documenting every inch of Lisa's private property. Lisa watched the footage twice, making notes about timestamps and specific actions. Patricia had committed criminal trespass, invasion of privacy, and potentially attempted burglary by trying to see inside the house. These weren't HOA violations anymore. These were serious crimes, but Lisa also realized something else. Patricia had no idea who she was dealing with. Patricia saw her as just another resident to intimidate and control. She had no idea that Lisa prosecuted people like her for a living. Lisa sat back in her chair and considered her options. She could call the police immediately and have Patricia arrested. She could file a restraining order. She could expose Patricia to the neighborhood and the HOA board. But Lisa's professional experience had taught her that people like Patricia didn't stop at just one escalation. Patricia would continue pushing boundaries until she was forced to stop. The question was whether Lisa wanted to end this now, or wait to see how far Patricia would push. Lisa decided to wait. She made copies of the security footage and stored them securely. She documented everything with photos and detailed notes. She researched Patricia's background and discovered a pattern of similar behavior in previous neighborhoods. Patricia had created a problem much bigger than she realized. She had invaded the privacy of someone who knew exactly what laws she had broken and exactly how to hold her accountable. Lisa went back to making lunch, but now she was planning something much more significant than a weekend meal. She was building a case, and Patricia was about to become her next defendant. Patricia, meanwhile, was at home going through her photos and measurements, convinced she had gathered enough evidence to force Lisa into compliance. She had no idea that she had just given Lisa everything she needed to destroy her completely. The game had changed, but only one player knew it. Patricia was feeling confident. Her secret inspection of Lisa's backyard had given her a sense of power and control that she craved. She had convinced herself that her actions were completely justified, and that she was protecting the neighborhood from someone who might be hiding violations. Over the next week, Patricia began what she considered phase 2 of her enforcement strategy. She started making regular trips past Lisa's house, always carrying her official-looking clipboard and wearing what she called her inspection outfit, a crisp business suit that made her feel important and authoritative. Lisa noticed these patrol visits but didn't react. She was documenting everything, building what she knew would become an ironclad case. Every time Patricia walked slowly past her house, every time she stopped to take photos, every time she lingered near the fence line, Lisa's security cameras captured it all. Patricia's confidence grew with each passing day. She interpreted Lisa's silence as fear and submission. This encouraged her to become even bolder in her approach. On Wednesday afternoon, Patricia made a discovery that excited her more than it should have. While walking past Lisa's house, she noticed that the automatic sprinkler system occasionally sent a light spray of water about 3 inches onto the community walking path. The spray lasted maybe 10 seconds and dried quickly, but Patricia saw this as her golden opportunity. She spent the rest of the week documenting the sprinkler issue with obsessive detail. She took photos from multiple angles, measured the extent of the water spray, and even collected water in a small cup to prove that Lisa's sprinklers were contaminating community property. Patricia was so excited about her discovery that she couldn't keep it to herself. She started talking to other residents about Lisa's flagrant water violations and how something needed to be done before it got worse. Most neighbors politely listened and changed the subject, but Patricia found a few residents who were willing to support her crusade. There was Helen from 2 streets over, who had her own ongoing disputes with various neighbors. There was Robert, who was still angry about a parking situation from 6 months ago. And there was Jennifer, who seemed to enjoy neighborhood drama for entertainment. Patricia organized what she grandly called a community intervention committee. She convinced her 3 supporters that Lisa needed to be confronted directly about her violations and her attitude toward community. Standards, she thinks she can just ignore the rules because she's new. Patricia told the group during a meeting at her kitchen table. We need to show her that this community takes its standards seriously. Helen nodded enthusiastically. I've seen her car parked crooked in her driveway multiple times. She clearly has no respect for property lines, Robert added, and she never participates in community events. She acts like she's too good for the rest of us. Jennifer was just excited about the drama. When are we going to talk to her? Patricia had been planning this moment for days. Tuesday evening. She gets home from work around 6:30. We'll give her time to settle in, then approach her professionally to discuss the situation. Patricia spent the weekend preparing for what she saw as her moment of triumph. She printed out copies of all her documentation, prepared a formal presentation about Lisa's violations, and even practiced her speech in front of the mirror. Lisa, meanwhile, was having a very different kind of weekend. She was reviewing case files for an upcoming trial involving a harassment case that bore striking similarities to her own situation. The irony wasn't lost on her. Lisa had also been doing her own research on Patricia and her supporters. She discovered that Patricia had a history of escalating conflicts in previous neighborhoods before moving to Maplewood Hills. Helen had been involved in multiple disputes with the city over property issues. Robert had received several warnings from police about aggressive behavior toward neighbors. Lisa realized that Patricia wasn't just an overzealous HOA enforcer. She was someone with a pattern of boundary violations who had found others willing to enable her behavior. Tuesday evening arrived with perfect weather. Patricia had chosen the timing carefully, knowing that other neighbors would be outside doing yard work or walking their dogs. She wanted an audience for what she expected to be Lisa's public humiliation and submission. At 7 o'clock sharp, Patricia led her small group through Lisa's front gate and around to her backyard. Patricia had learned during her previous trespassing incident that Lisa's back gate was usually unlocked, making access easy. Lisa was in her kitchen preparing dinner when she heard voices in her backyard. Through her window, she watched 4 people march across her lawn toward her back patio. Patricia was in the lead, carrying a folder and wearing her most official-looking outfit. The others followed behind her like an angry mob. Lisa's professional instincts immediately kicked in. She recognized the body language, the group dynamics, and the aggressive approach. This wasn't a neighborly discussion. This was organized intimidation. She quickly activated the recording function on her phone and slipped it into her pocket. She also made sure her security cameras were functioning properly. Everything that was about to happen would be documented. Patricia positioned herself directly in front of Lisa's sliding glass door and began knocking loudly. The sound echoed through the house like someone was trying to break down the door. "Lisa, we know you're in there. Come out here and face the community," Patricia shouted. Lisa could see her neighbors through the glass. Patricia looked angry and determined. Helen appeared nervous but committed. Robert seemed excited about the confrontation. Jennifer was clearly enjoying the drama. Lisa took a deep breath and prepared to step outside, but then Patricia did something that changed everything. Patricia tried the door handle. Lisa watched in shock as Patricia actually attempted to open her sliding glass door. When it didn't open immediately, Patricia pushed against the glass and tried the handle again, more forcefully. "She's probably hiding in there," Patricia announced to her group. "She knows we caught her breaking community rules." Patricia cupped her hands against the glass and tried to peer inside Lisa's house. She was attempting to look into Lisa's kitchen, dining room, and down the hallway toward her home office. Lisa realized that Patricia had just escalated from harassment to attempted breaking and entering. Patricia was trying to enter her house without permission, with witnesses present while trespassing on her property. Helen seemed uncomfortable with Patricia's behavior. "Patricia, maybe we should just knock and wait for her to answer. She's avoiding her responsibilities to this community," Patricia replied, still trying to see through the glass. "Someone who disregards our rules probably has other things to hide." Patricia moved along the back of the house, trying to look through different windows. She was peering into Lisa's dining room, attempting to see into her living room and making comments about what she could observe. "Look at this place," Patricia said loudly. "Everything's too fancy for someone who claims to work a regular job. I bet she's hiding income to avoid HOA fees." Robert joined Patricia at the windows. "Maybe she's running some kind of business out of her house without permits." Lisa realized that Patricia wasn't just harassing her anymore. She was encouraging others to help her spy on Lisa's private life and was making unfounded accusations about illegal activities. Lisa had seen enough. She stepped onto her patio, calm and composed despite her anger. "Good evening," Lisa said politely. "You're on my private property without permission. I need you to leave immediately." Patricia spun around with a triumphant expression. "Finally. We've been trying to discuss your violations with you for weeks." "There's nothing to discuss," Lisa replied evenly. "You're trespassing on my property. Please leave now." "We represent this community," Patricia announced dramatically. "Your sprinklers are damaging community property. Your attitude toward HOA rules is unacceptable, and your refusal to participate in community activities shows disrespect for your neighbors." Lisa looked at each person in turn. Helen and Jennifer looked increasingly uncomfortable. Robert seemed to be enjoying the confrontation. Patricia looked absolutely convinced of her own righteousness. "I'll say this once more," Lisa said with the calm authority she used in courtrooms. "You are trespassing on my private property. You attempted to enter my house without permission. You are harassing me at my home. I am asking you to leave immediately." Patricia stepped closer to Lisa, trying to use intimidation tactics. "You can't just ignore community standards because you think you're better than everyone else. We have documentation of multiple violations and we're not leaving until this is resolved." Lisa smiled slightly. Patricia had just made several more mistakes that would be very useful in court. "I understand," Lisa said. "You've made your position very clear." She pulled out her business card and handed it to Patricia. Patricia looked at the card and her face went completely white. The card read, "Lisa Chen, District Attorney, County Prosecutor's Office." "As I was saying," Lisa continued in the same calm voice, "you are trespassing on the private property of a county prosecutor. You attempted to break into my house. You are harassing a law enforcement official. You have been stalking me for weeks and invading my privacy." The silence was complete. Helen and Jennifer started backing toward the gate. Robert looked like he wanted to run. Patricia stood frozen, still holding the business card, trying to process what had just happened. "I suggest you contact an attorney," Lisa added. "You're going to need one." The silence in Lisa's backyard was deafening. Helen and Jennifer had already started moving toward the gate, clearly wanting to distance themselves from whatever was about to happen. Robert looked confused and angry, as if he couldn't quite process how the situation had flipped so dramatically. But Patricia remained frozen, staring at the business card in her hand. Her face had gone from confident and aggressive to pale and shocked. The words district attorney seemed to be bouncing around in her head like a pinball, hitting every fear and realization at once. "This has to be fake," Patricia finally managed to say, her voice shaking slightly. "You're just trying to scare us." Lisa remained perfectly calm, which somehow made her more intimidating than if she had been angry. "Patricia, you've spent the last month trespassing on my property, harassing me at my home, attempting to spy on my private activities, and now you've tried to force your way into my house with witnesses present. Do you really think lying about my profession would help my case?" Patricia's mind was racing. She was remembering every violation notice she had issued, every time she had climbed over Lisa's fence, every photograph she had taken, every attempt to peer through Lisa's windows. All of it had been directed at a prosecutor. "I was just enforcing HOA rules," Patricia said weakly, but even she could hear how pathetic it sounded. "HOA rules don't give you the right to commit crimes," Lisa replied. "Criminal trespass, harassment, stalking, attempted burglary, invasion of privacy, and now intimidation of a law enforcement official. These are serious felonies, Patricia." Helen spoke up from near the gate. "Patricia, we need to leave now." Jennifer was already at the gate, clearly regretting her decision to get involved in Patricia's crusade. "I'm sorry," she called to Lisa. "I didn't know. We were just trying to help with community standards." Robert, however, seemed determined to make the situation worse. "You can't abuse your power like this," he said to Lisa. "Just because you're a prosecutor doesn't mean you can ignore community rules." Lisa turned her attention to Robert with the same calm intensity. "Robert, you're currently trespassing on my property after attempting to help someone break into my house. You participated in organized harassment of a prosecutor. Are you sure you want to keep talking?" Robert's bravado collapsed instantly. He mumbled something about not knowing Patricia was going to try the door handle and hurried toward the gate. Patricia was left standing alone in Lisa's backyard, still holding the business card, trying to figure out how to salvage a situation that had become completely unsalvageable. "Lisa, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Patricia said, attempting to regain some composure. "I take my community responsibilities very seriously. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot, but surely we can work this out between neighbors." Lisa had to admire Patricia's ability to pivot, even in a hopeless situation. "Patricia, there's no misunderstanding. I have security footage of you climbing over my fence and spending 2 hours in my backyard without permission. I have documentation of every harassing violation notice you've issued. I have recordings of you attempting to break into my house tonight." Patricia's last bit of color drained from her face. Security footage? Multiple cameras, multiple angles, weeks of documentation. Everything you've done has been recorded and preserved as evidence. Patricia tried one more desperate approach. "Look, I'm sorry if I got a little overzealous, but you have to understand I was just trying to maintain community standards. I'll back off and we can forget this whole thing happened." Lisa shook her head. "Patricia, you've committed multiple felonies. You've harassed a prosecutor at her home. You've violated my privacy repeatedly. You've attempted to break into my house. And you did all of this while organizing other residents to participate in your criminal behavior." "But I'm apologizing," Patricia said desperately. "Can't we just move forward from here?" "That's not how the law works," Lisa explained patiently. "When someone commits crimes, they face consequences. The fact that you targeted a prosecutor just makes those consequences more serious." Patricia finally understood that Lisa wasn't going to be intimidated, negotiated with, or convinced to drop the matter. The reality of her situation was beginning to sink in. "What happens now?" Patricia asked quietly. "Now you face the legal system," Lisa said. "I'll be filing a police report tomorrow morning. I'll be requesting charges for every crime you've committed, and I'll be seeking a restraining order to protect myself and other residents from your future harassment." Patricia looked around Lisa's backyard as if seeing it clearly for the first time. She was standing in the private space of someone she had systematically harassed and terrorized. She had brought witnesses to her own crime spree. She had documented her own illegal activities with photos and measurements. "I never meant for it to go this far," Patricia said, and for the first time she sounded genuine. "But it did go this far," Lisa replied. "And your intentions don't change what you actually did." Patricia started walking toward the gate, then turned back. "Will you at least consider that I was trying to help the community?" Lisa looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Patricia, helping the community doesn't involve breaking into people's houses. It doesn't involve stalking your neighbors. It doesn't involve organizing harassment campaigns. What you did wasn't about community service. It was about power and control." Patricia left without another word, and Lisa was finally alone in her backyard. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the evening air and feeling the peace she had been hoping for when she moved to this neighborhood. The next morning, Lisa kept her word. She arrived at the police station with a comprehensive file of evidence. The detective who took her statement was impressed by the thoroughness of her documentation. "I've seen a lot of neighborhood disputes," the detective said, "but I've never seen someone document their own crimes so completely." "She basically built your case for you," Lisa smiled. "That's what happens when someone assumes they're dealing with a regular citizen instead of a prosecutor." The charges were filed that afternoon. Criminal trespass, harassment, stalking, attempted burglary, invasion of privacy, and intimidation of a law enforcement official. Patricia was arrested at her home, with local news cameras capturing her being led away in handcuffs. The story spread quickly through social media. "Karen arrested after harassing district attorney" became a viral headline. The body cam footage of Patricia's arrest, where she kept insisting she was just enforcing community standards, was viewed millions of times. But Lisa's victory was about more than just Patricia. Her investigation had uncovered a pattern of harassment that affected multiple residents. Helen, Jennifer, and Robert all faced charges as accomplices in the final trespassing incident. The HOA board, faced with potential liability for Patricia's actions, immediately removed her from all positions and banned her from any future enforcement activities. They also implemented new policies requiring board approval for all violation notices and establishing clear procedures for addressing disputes. Several other neighbors came forward with their own stories of Patricia's harassment. The mailman testified that Patricia had tried to get him to report on residents' mail delivery patterns. The landscaping crew reported that Patricia had attempted to get them to spy on homeowners' activities. Patricia's attorney advised her to accept a plea bargain rather than face trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The video footage was damning, and her victim was a prosecutor who knew exactly how to present a case. Lisa had gotten more than justice. She had gotten the peaceful home she had been looking for. The neighborhood was finally free from Patricia's reign of terror, and Lisa could enjoy her backyard without worrying about unwanted intrusions. But most importantly, Lisa had shown that no one is above the law, no matter how official they think they are or how much authority they believe they possess. Patricia had learned the hard way that targeting the wrong person can have consequences far beyond anything she had imagined. The weeks following Patricia's arrest brought a sense of peace to Maplewood Hills that many residents hadn't felt in years. Lisa's case against Patricia moved through the legal system with the efficiency that comes from overwhelming evidence and professional prosecution. Patricia's attorney, a criminal defense lawyer named Michael Torres, reviewed the evidence with growing dismay. Security footage, documented harassment patterns, witness testimony, and recorded attempts at breaking and entering. His client had essentially created a textbook case for prosecution. "Patricia, I have to be honest with you," Michael told her during their first meeting. "This is one of the worst situations I've ever seen. You targeted a district attorney and documented your own crimes." Patricia sat in the attorney's office looking smaller than she had in months. The confident, authoritative persona she had built around her HOA enforcement role had completely crumbled. "I just wanted to maintain community standards," she repeated for what felt like the 100th time. "Community standards don't include breaking and entering," Michael replied bluntly. "The prosecutor has video footage of you trying to force your way into her house. You brought witnesses to your own attempted burglary." The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. Patricia was facing multiple felony charges. If convicted on all counts, she could spend several years in prison. Her reputation in the community was destroyed. The HOA had banned her from all activities, and worst of all, she was being prosecuted by the very person she had been harassing. Michael explained her options. "We can try to fight this in court, but honestly, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your best bet is to accept a plea agreement and hope the prosecutor is willing to show some mercy." Lisa, meanwhile, had recused herself from personally prosecuting the case to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. The case was assigned to her colleague David Park, an experienced prosecutor who specialized in harassment and stalking cases. David reviewed Lisa's documentation with professional admiration. "This is the most thorough case file I've ever received," he told Lisa. "You documented everything perfectly." "I knew she wouldn't stop escalating," Lisa replied. "People like Patricia always push boundaries until someone forces them to stop." David was prepared to push for the maximum penalties, but Lisa had a different idea. "I want to make this a teaching moment, not just a punishment." Lisa proposed a plea agreement that would serve justice while also protecting the community from future harassment. Patricia would plead guilty to reduced charges, serve community service instead of prison time, attend mandatory anger management and conflict resolution classes, pay restitution for damages, and accept a permanent restraining order. Most importantly, Patricia would be required to make a public apology to the community and participate in a neighborhood mediation program designed to help other HOA disputes before they escalated to criminal behavior. Patricia's attorney was surprised by the generous offer. "Why is she willing to be so lenient?" he asked David. "Because she's more interested in solving the problem than destroying your client," David explained. "But if Patricia rejects this offer, they'll seek maximum penalties on all charges." Patricia agonized over the decision for days. Accepting the plea meant admitting guilt and facing public humiliation. But rejecting it meant risking years in prison. Her husband Bob finally convinced her to take the deal. "Patricia, you made mistakes. Big mistakes. But Lisa is giving you a chance to make things right without destroying your whole life." The plea hearing took place on a Tuesday morning in a packed courtroom. Many Maplewood Hills residents had come to witness the end of Patricia's harassment campaign. Local news stations were present, having followed the story since Patricia's arrest. Judge Maria Rodriguez reviewed the plea agreement carefully. "Ms. Henderson, do you understand that by accepting this plea you are admitting to criminal trespass, harassment, and attempted burglary?" Patricia stood nervously at the defendant's table. Yes, Your Honor. And do you understand the terms of your sentence? Including 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, restitution payments, and a permanent restraining order? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Rodriguez looked directly at Patricia. Ms. Henderson, harassment and stalking are serious crimes that cause real harm to victims. The fact that you targeted a prosecutor shows either remarkable boldness or remarkable stupidity. Which was it? Patricia's attorney nudged her to respond. Stupidity, Your Honor. Definitely stupidity. The courtroom erupted in quiet laughter, and even Judge Rodriguez smiled slightly. The court accepts your plea agreement, the judge announced. But let me be clear, Ms. Henderson. This restraining order is permanent. You are not to contact Ms. Chen directly or indirectly. You are not to go on her property. You are not to photograph her home or activities. If you violate any terms of this agreement, you will serve the original prison sentence. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. 2 weeks later, Patricia stood before a packed community meeting to deliver her public apology. The HOA had rented the local community center, and nearly every resident of Maplewood Hills was present. Patricia approached the microphone looking genuinely remorseful. The confident, aggressive woman who had terrorized the neighborhood was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to understand the harm she had caused. I owe this community an apology, Patricia began, her voice shaking slightly. Over the past year, I lost sight of what community service actually means. I became obsessed with control and power instead of focusing on helping my neighbors. She looked directly at several residents she had harassed over the months. I violated your privacy. I made your homes feel unsafe. I created fear and anxiety where there should have been friendship and cooperation. Patricia's voice grew stronger as she continued. I targeted Lisa Chen not because she was violating any real rules, but because she wouldn't submit to my authority. I escalated from minor complaints to serious crimes because I couldn't accept that I was wrong. The room was completely silent as Patricia concluded her apology. I hope that over time, through my community service and counseling, I can earn back some small measure of your trust. But I understand if that never happens. I'm sorry. Lisa stood up from the back of the room. Patricia, I accept your apology, and I hope this experience teaches all of us the difference between community service and community control. The applause was genuine, if cautious. Patricia's apology felt real, and Lisa's response showed the grace that had been missing from their neighborhood for too long. Over the following months, Patricia fulfilled her community service requirements by working with local domestic violence shelters and homeless services. Her mandatory counseling sessions helped her understand how her need for control had grown into criminal behavior. She also participated in the neighborhood mediation program, helping other HOA disputes get resolved through conversation instead of escalation. Patricia's experience became a cautionary tale that helped prevent other conflicts from reaching criminal levels. Bob and Patricia quietly sold their house and moved to a different state 6 months after the plea hearing. Patricia had learned her lesson, but she knew that rebuilding her reputation in Maplewood Hills would take longer than she had. Lisa finally got the peaceful home she had been looking for. Her backyard became a place of relaxation instead of stress. She hosted barbecues for neighbors, started a community garden project, and even joined the HOA board to help implement better policies for handling disputes. The neighborhood developed new procedures for addressing complaints. All violation notices had to be approved by the full HOA board. Residents were encouraged to talk directly to their neighbors about minor issues before filing formal complaints. And most importantly, everyone understood that community standards were about cooperation, not control. Tom, Lisa's next-door neighbor, summed it up perfectly during one of their evening conversations over the fence. You know what the best part is? People actually want to be part of the community now. When Patricia was running things, everyone just tried to avoid attention. Now people are working together. Lisa smiled as she watered her garden in the peaceful evening light. That's what community is supposed to feel like. The story of Patricia's downfall became legendary in HOA circles throughout the county. The case was studied in law enforcement training programs as an example of how harassment can escalate to serious criminal behavior. Patricia's video-recorded crimes became teaching tools for prosecutors handling stalking cases. But for Lisa, the most important outcome was simpler. She had a home where she could relax after difficult days at work. She had neighbors who respected boundaries while building genuine relationships, and she had proven that no one, regardless of their self-appointed authority, is above the law. Patricia had learned that community service isn't about power or control. It's about making life better for everyone. Lisa had shown that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about creating safety and peace for entire communities, and Maplewood Hills had learned that the best way to maintain community standards is through respect, communication, and understanding rather than fear and intimidation. The HOA's new motto, suggested by Lisa and adopted unanimously, was displayed on a sign at the neighborhood entrance, Maplewood Hills, where neighbors support each other. It was a lesson that would last long after Patricia's harassment was just a memory.